Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the professor, Luigi. Rosa Bianca, what's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, today we have live from Vancouver Island, Steven Falk, the CEO of Switchback. Switchback, every small business after today's podcast is going to know what Switchback is because they're going to apply it to their small business. He's going to teach us how to build team, camaraderie, and team spirit within your organization. Steven, welcome to the podcast. Give the audience a 30,000 foot view of what Switchback is and how your 3-day plan can revolutionize their business.
Oh, that's a great intro. Thank you so much. Watch out. You better set the timer. Ready, set, go. You're either, as an entrepreneur, building team or scattering team. You're either building that capacity or out. You're either building resilience in your team or otherwise. Switchback has defined targets that you can just latch onto, hitch your wagon to, that will help you, give you the mindset and the skill set in order to build team. And whether you're trying to, advance, scale or finance, or you're scaling your team, it doesn't really matter what sort of phase you're at. This is one of those human factor skills that once you nail it, it's like, I thought that only some people got to get that piece. For instance, when we're all like in high school, we're like, well, look at that guy that can just smooge, go from the basketball players to the band kids to the drama kids hanging out at the shop. And he's like able to just weave in and out all those different ecosystems effortlessly. And you think, oh, that's just a special skill. From Switchback, we say there's nothing special. It all can be learned.
So can you give the audience some real examples on an organization pre-Switchback and post-Switchback so we could really have a salient understanding of what Switchback can do to a team?
Sure. So I'll pick our anchor client. So a forestry company with 1,500 employees.
Okay.
In the most rugged setting you can imagine. So think of the fjords of Norway and then make them sharper and steeper. And then say, oh, we're going to log.
Yeah, that's a rough profession, buddy. Yeah, I got you.
Heavy equipment with men that may or may not have teeth. So you can see that. Showering is optional.
Hey, you leave my Canadian brethren alone.
They're my people. I'm just telling you. Okay, so here it is.
By the way, you should be practicing the Star Spangled Banner from what rumor suggests.
100%. 100%. I woke up this morning with just crazy ideas as to how to leverage some of Trump's like epic statements into like these incredible like little sound bites. Yeah.
Come on, tell me you can't find a DJ that could do a "Oh Canada" Star Spangled Banner remix. You can have the best
you're probably talking to that guy. I think I am your guy. Thank you for that. I'll write that down. Okay, so this company, they measure something called medical incident reporting. So it's called MIR for short. So their MIR was 16.5 back in 2005, which means that they're killing on average 3 people a year. Killing on average 3 people a year, and injuring like hundreds. They went after, like, there was in BC there was like 42 fatalities in logging industry in that 1 year. So this is like BC's British Columbia. So this is a small sample size for 42 fatalities. So they had a full stop. They said, okay, we need to deal with this. So think of this like an XY axis, because that's a lot of people have that in mind. So the province focused on the X axis, which is totally cool, which is we need to certify, qualify, regulate, like punish bad behavior. And so they went after the rules regs, and they actually shifted it from 16.5 to 10.5, which is a great turning point. So that takes us to like 2009. In 2009, they had again another catastrophic near fatality. They called me into their office and they said, okay, we've got this far so far, not using their language. This is my language, using the x-axis of like rules, regs, and systems and certification. We're missing something. What are we missing? And they go, Steve, you're a very excitable guy. So here it is. shut the hell up for an hour and a half. We're going to load the pipeline, which is your brain. And then you're going to tell us what we're missing. And so they had like the regulator there as well. The union was there. So they gave me at a granular level everything that happened with this one incident that took place. And then they say, okay, give it to us. What are we missing? What's our blind spot? And so I just started describing the human factor side of it and how this man went from front brain thinking to back brain thinking. And he made actually 14 decisions, pow, 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 till his last decision, he was out of his mind, even though he's like a good worker. He's got a family. He's got a boat in the driveway. He's got a mortgage. He's on the safety committee. He's one of your golden employees. He's not like, what if this guy's doing cocaine? He's not that guy. He's the guy that's going, we could build an operation around this guy. This guy in the heat of the moment with nobody else around him. He's a guy that runs a chainsaw and falls down trees, right? He made 14 decisions. And he wasn't aware that he had switched operating systems from the front brain operating system to the back brain operating system. He was pouring out adrenaline. He was having tunnel vision. He had ringing in his ears. And then he started breaking the rules. Pow, 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 pow. So when I describe that, and I always draw, that's what I do. I draw on paper because that helps people get into a helicopter and they can see what's going on. They get out of their own bodies almost. And they can visually see it, because especially men, man, we need to see stuff. We need blueprints. So when that room saw that, it literally blew up. The F-bombs started flying around. You got to imagine this West Coast environment. It's really quite something. And they're like, you just got into my head. You just told me, you just described why my last divorce was so horrible. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like they're like pinging all over. I'm going, wow, this is pretty crazy. So I wrap up the meeting, and I'm walking out the hallway, and their director of safety goes, Steve, like you got to hear his voice, like big barrel chest. Steve, hold on a second. Pins me against the wall, and I'm like 6'1", so I'm no small guy, right? Pins me against the wall as if I'm a 14-year-old. Poof, shoulders me. You have no idea what happened in there, do you? I go, not too sure what you're talking about. He goes, Steve, you're a very distractible guy. I'll make you a deal. If you shut everything else down, talk to your wife. We'll be your first client. You're going to save lives, and the world's going to get your message. Deal? I'm like, okay.
And the rest is history.
Well, here it is. They went from 16.5 for medical incident reporting down to 10.5, down to 0.4 in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Same crew, same machinery, same fjords, same really, really tough environment.
So what were these real rugged frontal lobe men doing differently?
They became thinkers, metacognition thinkers. They were always very good at thinking about like the practical side of it. But what they weren't aware of is thinking about their thoughts. They weren't doing that extra level of the Rubik's Cube where you go, okay, I can see my problem, but now I'm thinking about how I'm thinking about my problem. And when you get to how I'm thinking of my problem, now you get to ask the question, which part of my brain is doing that thinking for me right now? My front brain operating system, which of course is golden. That's the gold standard. My back brain thinking operating system, which is absolutely ridiculous. When they got to there, they were able to then we call self-regulate.
So that's an extreme example because you're applying a skill set and a team camaraderie that is saving lives. You know, we're not talking about increased revenue or kumbaya tree hugging moments. I mean, you're saving lives. That's amazing.
I don't know. I guess there's a God in this world, because I mean, who gets to go from I was like a little humble stumbling family therapist. I mean, I was really good at my job, but I was kind of tired of it. And so we were doing all kinds we had food kiosks going. We had started a farmer's market. I bought a motel. Like we were all over the map. And then God in his mercy literally full stop me and said, hold on. Those are all distractions. Get rid of them. Here's your calling. Here's what I want to do.
Interesting. If you think about how the universe works, your prior job as a family therapist, I can't think of a better training ground to prepare you for Switchback.
Yeah, because think of it. I'm in a small community. I'm in the last farming community on our island before it's just forest, cougars, and bears. So you got to think this is the last little pocket of barely farmers.
Matthew, when he says cougars, we're not talking about Orlando Cougars. We're talking about the ones that
mountain
run.
lions. Let's keep this PG. Let's go team. Okay, so mountain lions and bears, and so when people back in the day, when you remember we had phone books,
I vaguely remember those. Yeah.
So some guy would do something stupid in Vegas, or he'd do something stupid in Vancouver, Seattle, and his wife would find out, so he's in trouble. So now he's got to find himself a counselor, and he's hating that thought. So you go in the phone book and there's only 10 of us listed, and oh, she's not a dude, she's not a dude, she's not a dude, and then there's one dude, and wait, his office is up his driveway on a farmland versus downtown right beside, where everyone can see me park my truck. So I got those dudes. So they had been my clients all along. The Super Duty Ford pickup truck had its regular parking spot on my farm, right?
So you were accustomed to speaking to the rugged individual.
Can I give you, I'll give you that, if that was the origin story, here's the origin story of what we call memory X's. Your audience is going to love this, because this is getting into the nitty gritty of what makes Switchback just so powerful. Can I go?
Please.
Okay. Memory X is a cool way to talk about dealing with trauma. So that's the last time I'm going to use the word trauma, because trauma just makes people run for the hills. Kind of like Kumbaya. Let's have a leadership retreat focused on early childhood trauma. It's let's not.
Bye-bye. Gotta go.
Yeah, that's right. So think about remember those toothless, amazing guys that I love? I'll kiss them on the cheeks if I get a chance, right? Anyways, memory X's. Want to move a memory X? That's interfering with your success. That's a totally different story, right? Okay, so one of those managers, he's got 120 employees, logging manager. He comes to see me back in my private practice. Big Super Duty, big tiny tank in the back. It's where you store your gas. There's coil up cables in the back of his truck. Comes in there full regalia, right? High vis vest, work boots, ripped jeans, smelling like diesel. Sits down in my chair. Let's get her done, Steve. I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I get paid enough for this. This is too much. But at the same time, I totally love him, because I know that my peers would be terrified of him, right? Because he just goes, boo. And everyone else is like, this is not a safe psychological space, right? So
Matt, are you getting an image that deodorant is optional on Vancouver Island?
I'm just worried about what his office smelled like.
You gotta meet my people. So I go, what's your intention? Are you wanting to get this done in a week or in 6 months? What's your, because Steve, get her done. So I go, okay, tell me what happened what motivated you to make the phone call? What just happened? He goes, I'll give it to you. Says, I'm out doing a round with my crew. So I'm way up a Switchback, visiting a grapple yard crew, and they're doing a long splice. And those buggers aren't wearing eye protection. A long spike. This is a cable like this. And they're going to splice a cable by hand with these marlin spikes. So they're using sledgehammers and these marlin spikes. They're knitting, but they're knitting with a cable that's this thick. It's amazing. And it takes brute strength. And the splice is at least 15 feet long. And you don't learn that on your first day of logging. This is one of those.
Another argument for the 51st state. Canada does not have OSHA.
That's right. Well, there they are. They're busting away, but they don't have their safety world up to snuff. This guy sees them essentially not wearing their eye protection. He goes completely bat crazy, and he loses his mind. Calls them the worst names in the book, and then he gets in his truck and peels off at a high speed. And then he goes from that adrenaline rush to the adrenaline rush of shame and regret. We've all experienced that, where you stick your neck out, you say something bold, you go, wow, that was completely out of order. And then you retreat into that self-rejection, shame and regret. So then he went on a side spar and just hid in the bush and literally almost cried. And he goes, this is BS. I need to get to the bottom of this. So anyways, while he's telling me the story, I'm watching him, because it's pro tip. You have to watch people. If you're a leader, entrepreneur, you have to be very, very interested in people, not just your widget. So I'm watching him, and his right eye, like Matthew right now, the way you're looking at me, I'm like, man, I gotta watch this guy's eyes. Like he's dialed in, man. So I'm watching his eyes, and it's like his right eye does something funky, and my brain goes, pay attention. Okay, so like, what is the? It's game time. It's game time, and I get this impression. Go 12 years old, but I don't have the courage to say 12 years old. I go, so I interrupt him. I say, hey, just before you keep going, something funky happened with your right eye, because that's what leaders do. Leaders go beyond the regular conversation. We can't just go, hey, how's it going, buddy? How about that? Blah, blah. We have to take it to that net. We have to go through that social barrier and ask that extra question. We have to go through. We have to have the courage to ask more. And so we teach that as well as leadership. Because a lot of leaders are pretty cautious with, their ability to build their team. But you're one question away from building team with some of your most difficult, people within your company. So here's that difficult question. I stop him and say, hold on. Something happened with your right eye. He goes, what was it? He goes, I don't know, I got the number 12. He goes, what do you mean the number 12? Well, actually I got 12 years old. Your eye looked 12 years old. He goes, whoa, you're good. And the complete culture of the meeting changed instantly. Not over 6 months of trust building and creating psychologically safe spaces. It happened instantly. Instantly, I had won his trust. And he goes, you're good. And I go, okay, well, give me the goods. He goes, when I was 12, I was in a small tin boat with my brother out in Tawasin. My brother's 14. The wind whipped up. We started taking on water. We decided we couldn't make it back to shore. This is the ocean. So we both swam to shore. I made it. He drowned. He was the hero. I was the cull. Like I was a total useless kid. My parents were alcoholics. They blame me. I blame me for my brother's death. He was the one that was going to save our family. My sister was out to lunch. And he said, I just carry this thing that it's my fault whenever anyone does something that's remotely unsafe.
That's going to be tough for a kid to carry this whole life.
Okay, now ready? Let's play it now he's 52 years old. He's running an organization that, like, his operation alone, I think makes about maybe $100 million a year. He's driving up there as a 52-year-old, amazing world-class leader. He really was. And it was a world-class leader. He's driving up there, parks his truck, gets out of his truck, puts his hard hat on, high vis, walks towards that long splice, sees him without the eye protection. Boom, he goes from 52 to what age?
12.
Yes. If we would do like linguistical analysis of his swear words and how he put his sentence together, did he sound like a 52-year-old swearing man or a 12-year-old?
So how do you accelerate 40 years of therapy to make sure this 52-year-old then responds well the next time his team or his business is in danger?
Well, remember I used that the key word is team. Your brain also wants team more than anything else. Like if we use that term, which means your brain has a deep desire to reconcile its memory X's with its prefrontal cortex. It wants to reconcile all those things that are stored independent that make you reactive. It wants to, because that's the survival of the species. That's what gives you resilience and strength and wisdom and clarity and acuity. So already we have just our biology in favor of us, in that our brain wants to reconcile these memories. It can't in the early stages of development, because that would cause our kids would have mental breakdowns. If the barking dog and the nightmare and the scary movie, if that all got merged into their developmental phase, that they wouldn't survive. So the brain has a compartmentalized system in place for our growing up years, but for most people, we never unhook that compartmentalized system when we're adults, when we actually have the ability to process. So it's going to sound crazy simple, but if you heard of the term exposure therapy, so you just need to expose that memory X to your front brain. Think of it like a Rubik's Cube. I'll just use my phone. So the Rubik's Cube, you have your back brain can only see one plane.
Okay.
Right. But your front brain has the ability to do this. Your front brain is amazing. It can spin it around. Plus, it can spin it around with this. And so now you have this and this spinning around together, along with, I'm getting a bit crazy here, but, it has the ability to integrate all kinds of data in order to make sense. So the name of the game from a neuralistical point of view and moving a memory X is to expose your front brain to it. So the way he did it was, it's going to blow your mind. It's so wild. So when's the last time you talked to your wife about this? She goes, oh, probably 35 years ago. Would you mind talking to your wife? Like, give her the full story, but try to stay calm. Try not to have an adrenaline rush or have any cortisol flow through your body when you tell the story. And then try to give it a bit of a spin. Try to do a little bit of what we call metacognition, thinking about your story. Like, think about your story while you're telling it. See if you can find nuances. Just like to make it a bit more interesting, a bit more detailed. It doesn't have to be like crazy story. Just like detail it up. So sure. How about your adult kids? He says, I don't know if they've ever heard the story. What about your senior leaders, like your woods foreman, your roads foreman, and no, they haven't heard. Okay, so there's your first group. I said, grab a piece of paper, which is actually critically important. Write it down. Move in the 12-year-old memory X. I would put money on that memory is going to be stored permanently in the front of your brain by the time you've listed whatever there is, 30 items on this page.
Sure.
And literally, that was the last time he ever had that overreaction when he saw an unsafe thing at work, because he did the work. But the work wasn't even that hard. He wanted to. Plus, his 52-year-old brain did the work. His 12-year-old brain didn't do the work. So he had tremendous capacity. He had an MBA, for crying out loud. His front brain was ready and available to do the work. He just didn't understand that he had two operating systems. We call it the battle of the brains. He didn't realize that he was having this switch take place, switchback.
So, Steven, your example, this gentleman was the executive of the firm, so he's in a privileged place. Does your switchback methodology take into account maybe a one-on-one with each team member? Because we may each be carrying our own little, drowning, swimming, 12-year-old battle.
Sure. When we started designing it, I mean, we're just trying to. I'm just scrappy, so I'm just trying to make a living. So I can't go to some remote logging camp and do like an hour of therapy, like, because that doesn't make sense. So I had to invent a one-day program. I thought, my wife goes, Steve, you're going to kill us with a one-day program because there's 2 days of travel one day. So I think I need to invent a 3-day program.
Let's make a trip out of it.
That's right. Let's like, I travel on Monday, work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, get home on Friday. And I mean, sometimes life is that simple, right? Like that actually, that works for me. And so we said, okay, what are we going to do those 3 days? Well, I'm going to kill these guys. If they're used to being in the bush and working, and all of a sudden they're sitting in their lunchroom for 3 days. So it's okay, I probably can only hold their attention for 4 hours, which is pretty truthful. So I invented 4 hours of group training. I go, what the heck am I going to do in the afternoon? Oh, let's do one-on-ones.
Okay, perfect.
So here we go. Ready? 2 of us now travel literally around all North America. And we've done work in Asia and a big job in Australia. So we travel 2 by 2, the 2 of us. We deliver a 4-hour in-person training with like 24 people sitting in a horseshoe. And day 1, we introduced the concept. Day 2, they're already using their 12-year-old stories on the board and drawing out X's and they're talking to each other. But in the afternoons is when the magic happens. That's when we sit down and we have this 45-minute conversation with a perfect stranger. But I'm telling you, that's when they tip their cards.
But isn't that where the team building really takes place, when they're getting vulnerable and sharing stories of what happened to their past, and you have a different outlook?
100%. Yeah, like we're hitching a wagon to a giant aerospace company, and literally he said, Switchback is like you go to a different dimension. Like, we've done all this training, but our training is so sanitized, because we'll say, hey, when it's your turn to get up and give your example or tell your story, we don't care if it's from a camping trip or on the shop floor. It's just something that's real for you.
Well, if you take your story from the point of view of the workers who got berated by the boss, right? They're probably just like, fuck this guy, he's an asshole, but they didn't understand why he cared so much. So essentially, if he actually shared that story with them, logic would dictate they would care more and have that story stuck in their memory cortex, right? Moving
We
forward.
have hardened employees reconciling with each other during our training.
Mhm.
A guy will we don't call them bullies, we call them snowball throwers, because it's again, it's a way to disarm it, right? So we'll have the snowball
I
thrower
like
of the night shift come and stand in front of the room going, I just want to let you guys know that I am the snowball thrower. And as of yesterday, I'm ashamed of it. And I'm going to change. At least I'll try to change. So, and I've been aiming most of my snowballs at you. And I regret. I didn't realize that you lost your business in a fire and that you're working night shift because you, not only your business, but I didn't know that backstory. Now that I know it, I'm calling the dogs off. And like the supervisor of night shift is going, what is going on? Like, how is this possible that this is happening during training?
Steve, it's kind of difficult to keep emptying out the bucket without replenishing the bucket, especially if you're doing a lot of these one-on-ones. How do you engage something like a switchback to try to redeem yourself and just re-energize?
That's a great question. Couple things. I'm really
Besides watching the Vancouver Canucks you lose to the New York Rangers.
that puts fresh X's in the back of my brain. That's the problem with the Canucks. I come from an ethnic background, so Mennonite background, and my grandparents, like, they were beat up during the Bolshevik Revolution, and then beat up during the dirty 30s in the prairies and the plains. So when they came to Vancouver, they came for logging jobs, small community, and little tiny farms. I happen to still live on that road. So
That's
number
awesome.
one, I know who I am. I'm surrounded by brothers and sisters that know who I am. I still go to that little country church that my grandpa started. And unfortunately, my brother has been like the minister for 37 years. And so, poor guy. Like,
Come on, how can you take your brother seriously as a minister? You're like, come on, man,
I
really?
know. Well, I just think, poor guy, he is like, and now I need to come up with another life-changing sermon for Steven Falk. It's like, oh, and then I'm sitting right in the dead center of the church going, okay, wow me, bro, wow me.
Yeah, the loaves, the fish. Yeah.
No, but there's something to it. I don't have that. I'm not a very compartmentalized guy. Like, even I'll just do a reveal. I'm here's my office. I'm in
That's
the
a nice office.
Yeah, so it's pretty sweet. But that office also doubles as a place where we have dinner on like a finger feast, like on Sunday night, and I'll have up to like 11 grandkids up there.
That's wonderful.
So if you want to, some of them take Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so I honestly, I can come from a meeting like this to going downstairs and having my hedges were ripped off like 10 minutes after our
So
call.
can you have a social conversation with two guys like myself and Matt at a bar and not start psychoanalyzing our Freudian slips and
It'd be hard to be friends with this guy.
Well, no.
Yeah.
But I started self-regulate. My wife says, Steve, we need a few friends, okay? So don't scare everybody off. But they say, the people you surround yourself around, like those 5 friends that have you. Last night we were talking with our son and daughter-in-law. They were hanging out at our place. They're on maternity leave. Surprise, surprise, right? And we were listing the 5 friends that you can be unfiltered with. And that was really good to list those friends for me. I'm going, because I have a ton of people that I throttle way, way, way back just to fit in. And then I have friends that I never have to throttle anything down. I can talk about dreams. I can talk about your right eye flickering. I can do anything I want to talk about. And it's fair.
No, that's great. You're very lucky to have 5 of those. I'm blessed because I've got those 5 friends, and one of them happens to be on this podcast with us because we'll call each other sometimes like, bro, I got to tell you something. not because I want to bother him or he wants to bother me, but we just don't have that many people that you can share certain things with because they're just, when you're running a business, some things are just outlandish.
Yes. Yeah. And I think to your audience, I mean, that might be a great homework assignment for them to go, do you have people that you can connect with in an unthrottled way where your full genius and brilliance and gift and calling can just be full volume and you're not apologizing for it or dumbing it down? And if they don't have it, they got to find a group. I mean, here's my little pitch. We're just launching can't even say the name because it's so new. Switched on Leader Project. 8 weeks where people can be unthrottled together. Switched on Leader Project.
SALP.
Oh, that's
SALP.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to look very much like a steady, regular mastermind. You know, where you have like a 90-minute podcast like a Zoom call once a week.
Mm-hmm.
We load them with all of our material, give them all the goodies and some one-on-ones. But what we found during COVID, we all went through that, right? We pivoted with some of our sort of support, and I just ran this free Switchback innovation team. So I just went out to all of our clients, and anybody wants to get together once a month, let's get together. With this one dude from Australia, gets on our call, and we do a little bit of teaching, and then we just interact with each other, but unthrottled. At the end, when we're sitting around the fireside, just BSing at the end of the Zoom call, right? And here's another pro tip for your listeners. If you have team calls, you need buffers. You need the warm up before the meeting starts. That's required to be part of. And you need the cool down at the end, where you just hang out with each other, like 10 minutes before, 20 minutes after. And if you're not willing or able to do that, you're going to end up with a robotic team. You're not going to end up with a
you're going
dynamic.
to get better at that.
It doesn't even matter if you're talking about someone's cats.
Yeah.
You got to know about the cats. If you don't know about the cats, you're not being a very dynamic, three-dimensional leader.
Steve, on that subject, I want to ask you for some advice, and I think it's going to benefit the audience. There's going to be some real quick ad-libbing on your part. So my family and I, we just came back from vacation, and we went to this spot that had cats along the beach. I never knew this. Years and years, my wife is deathly afraid of cats. We just never happened to be in an environment where we were both around cats. So one day we're having lunch, and our son is still young enough where he makes crumbs. So all the cats at this resort loved little James. So he was like the Pied Piper. They're all following him. So it's one of our first meals, and I guess my wife feels a little nudge by her foot, and she yells out, she has this screech. I think they heard it 2 islands over. And my son starts giggling. And then we look down, and it's a cat. And I asked my wife, I go, what's going on? What just happened? And we started talking, and her father had a pizzeria years and years ago where he had a cat. And one day they went to visit dad, and she saw that this cat attacked a customer. And she was maybe 8 or 9 years old and never got over it. So now my son, God bless him, who's got my sense of humor, every time we saw a cat the rest of the trip, he's like, Mommy, look.
How old is James on this trip?
James is just under 2.
Wow, so he already knows how to poke the bear at 2.
He got this little mischief. He's got this, I don't know where he got it from. He's got this mischievous side.
That feature alone is a foundation of success for James.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears, brother.
No, seriously, the fact that he at 2 years old can nuance his mom freaking out, pick up the fact that this is something, and then leverage it as a way to build team, but in a very cheeky way. That is, from a neuroscience point of view, that is complex processing. Oh, there's greatness coming out of James, man.
All right, so how do we fix my wife?
You know what's so interesting? It may not be the cat. It may have been her dad's reaction.
Oh, deep.
Yeah. So her dad, I'm imagining her dad giving that cat the biggest punt it's ever had.
I'm imagining it became a calzone.
Yeah. So it flew across the room, hit the wall. But this is my guess. This is just a guess, but my guess, your wife saw the killer in your dad, the pure violence. I'm not a safe father anymore. I am now a lunatic back brain. We call it.
We all have that side, of course.
Of course, we call it mass murder. The mass murderer in us, right? She saw that even just for like 1.3 seconds.
Yeah.
That, my hunch, is the memory storage.
Huh.
So now the front brain says, no, your dad, I mean, he's charismatic. He's a great guy. You know, the whole community loves him. He's a great guy. He's safe. This moment in her brain goes, no, my dad's not safe. So the brain says, no problem. I will store that independently. That way you can maintain your dad as a safe, loving father. And this mass murderer gets stored in the back brain operating system, storage system that's like up in a cave, and we call it a memory X. So when she got triggered by that cat, it was a surprise attack, right? The cat just rubbing her foot. She shrieks like she's like flight, and then fight, and then up to flight. She probably did like 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, like almost instantaneously, and then she was probably embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
But then she recovered quickly and says, I hate cats.
Yep. That's exactly what happened. Yep.
The truth is she doesn't necessarily hate cats. She just hasn't reconciled a memory X. Now your son is going to be writing comedy for Hollywood someday because this is good material. Because that's what creates entertainment. So James is like, wow, I'm going to just change that script right now and hold that thought. And he goes, oh, now I know how we can probably have this a recurring theme for probably 3 or 4 episodes, and then it'll get old. Yeah. But it'll run for the month of February. So he's rewriting the script as to how he's going to be likable and become across as charming and cheeky at the same time. And he picked it up so he wasn't freaked out by
no, he was like laughing at his mom. Yeah,
he was fascinated by it. So he's already from an entrepreneurial point of view. And you asked the question early on: how do I not get burnt out being loaded down by all those one-on-ones?
Yes.
If you take the mindset of being fascinated by people's stories, like your son is developing at 2 years old, if you establish that as your primary mindset, it doesn't lead to burnout.
You really enjoy what you do.
Yeah, and you're fascinated by it. So we've trained our entire team that when they see that grumpy guy in the back of the room, you know, with his little cup that he's spit and snuff, you know, that he's chewing, he's in there with his Montana buckle on, right? So it's like you will never, ever, 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 ever break into this brain, right? We see him, we're like, who gets the one-on-one with him? And of course, day 1, he hasn't signed.
Game on.
Yeah. Day 2, still no sign up, right? Day 3, last appointment, 3:30 in the afternoon. There he is, Wayne. And we've trained ourselves to have that as the victory. So, and be fascinated by it. And then of course, if you hook it into, like, let's go biblical here for a second. That is the parable of the lost sheep, where you leave the 99, the 23 people that are going, Switchback is the most amazing training we've ever taken our whole life, says the U.S. government employee, right? This one guy goes, this is bullshit. That's the lost sheep. And so we've trained ourselves to go after that lost sheep. So basically leave the flock behind, go find that person that's been brainwashed and starved and doesn't even know it's their name or their identity anymore. And they're full of X's and fleas and everything else. And they smell bad. And because we're in our mindset, we go, no, we're going out. Because how many lost sheep does it take to ruin an entrepreneurial world? Just one. Yeah. And sometimes it's your brother-in-law. Sometimes it's your business partner. Sometimes it's, someone that you can't just punt out of the pizzeria.
Man, you're touching on something important here, because Matt and I speak to a lot of small business owners that are family businesses. And 4 times out of 5, the conflict is internal family dynamics.
100%. Even like good old mom and dad that lent you $100,000 to get started, but they still have their fingers in the pie, right? They're still messing with the recipe. And so it's non-negotiable. You have to build team with those people. But if you have the mindset that, oh, mom and dad's just pissing me off, right away, boom, now you're shoving mom and dad into back brain storage. If you go, mom and dad fascinate me, and that $100,000, what a blessing, but what a fascinating conundrum we're in now. But if you say the word fascinating, the back brain is not that complex. It can't be fascinated. So which part of your brain takes over? The front brain operating system goes, okay, let's be fascinated. And now you get to spin the Rubik's Cube and start figuring out. And you find out your old man's giving you grief because his old man, he went and asked his old man for a loan back when he was 21. His old man said, no, you bootstrap this thing. So he's got this weird, funky, don't trust, and it isn't even about you.
Okay, so we identified the problem, right? We learned how to switch it in our mind. How do you fix the problem with your old man and change the situation?
Well, we have two pillars in Switchback.
Not asking for a friend.
Yeah, that's right. Oh dear, you guys are really good. Are we friends already? This is something else. See, this is the power of like a one-on-one. We're just having a one-on-one here, right? All of a sudden, it's not a room of 2,000 people at a conference. We're just hanging out, but it's so fun. Okay, so for a friend.
Before you answer, I have to give you context, because one context that you're lacking on a podcast, because we're on video. Okay.
Yes.
Matthew is 6'5", before lunch, 250 pounds. Okay. So he's very refined. He's a metrosexual. But let me tell you, he walks into a room and he's got a presence. Okay. So just kind of compute that into your equation.
Okay, so you're that dude that pinned me against the wall back in that logging story that said, Steve, you're a very distractible guy. I'm going to make you a
mentioning that, Steve. I thought we weren't mentioning that.
Okay. Oh, so great and almighty Matt. Here we go. But that's the crazy thing is you can be 6'5" and be an alpha. But if you have X's that are still in the back of your brain, you will have these limiting beliefs that says, I will not do this. I can't go there. I can't do this, because there's a chance that you're going to be sabotaged by a back brain memory X. And people hate that because they're 95% successful as a leader, as a husband, as a wife, as an entrepreneur. And then they have this 5% piece of poison that if they just by chance get in the wrong situation where they trigger adrenaline and cortisol, and cortisol goes through the brain's search engine and goes, yeah, no, nothing in the front brain that relates to this. Boom, back brain. And you open up the vault and there's that memory X. We hate going from, 45 to 5 years old, 45 to 15 years old. We hate that. And so typically what we do is we just throttle it back. And so you have entrepreneurs that can't do cold calls because they throttle it back. Why are they throttling? It's not their front brain that's throttling it back. It's their back brain. We have entrepreneurs that have the hardest time hiring their first, let's say, operations manager. Yeah. So they have to hold it all tight. So anytime an entrepreneur gets into a situation where like, man, I bumped against this glass ceiling twice, 3, 4 times, and I'm just not breaking through. That's not front brain problem. That's a back brain problem. And there is a story and a memory X waiting to be harvested.
I love it. We really respect your time being here with us. We appreciate it. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and the Switchback family and the new mastermind you're starting?
Oh, sure. So SwitchbackOS.com is our website. And we're such an amazing company that when you do contact us, that comes to my email address. So,
love it.
Oh, there you are. That's us.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that is by far the easiest way to go after it. And then of course we have all these different ways that you can join our community and get like our newsletter, or we call it Gold Letter, and a way to get into some of our different programs. You can digest everything that we've talked about here on like an e-learning course as well, right? We've got all those set up, but Switchback OS. OS stands for operating system.
Love it.
And Switchback has just showed up at 3:00 in the morning. Remember that story? So don't judge the messenger, man. It is what we've got.
I respect it. Steve, thank you for your time. I got one question before I let you run. So we started to talk earlier about Canada becoming the 51st state and Trump going out there and you thinking about things. So why don't you psychoanalyze Trump for us right now? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Gifted.
Okay.
Confident.
Mm-hmm.
King.
Wow. Okay.
But he's not the total package.
Okay.
Because he's not a spiritual leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a kingly leader. And so if United States and Western civilization has a chance in the world, the I'm going to use a theological, the priests have to step up and work just as hard as he has. So he's made the decree as the king. Now those of us that actually are boots in the ground, culture changers, which we are. Switchback is.
How did we just go from Canucks to Plato in one conversation? This is fantastic.
Because I chose not to throttle it back, man.
So I guess let me dive a little bit deeper there. So you think he's a cage rattler, right? He shakes his hand, but priests he doesn't own the hearts of the people?
No, he gives the decrees. But it's our job to deliver the transformation.
Yeah, I also think a little bit of that is very rudimentary negotiations 101, right? If you want to achieve 5, you ask for 10.
Yes. Yeah. And let's say this. Trump doesn't have what I would call the healing anointing. He has the prophetic anointing. So he prophesies as a king, 51st state.
Yeah.
And he might be dead wrong, but nevertheless, it came out of his mouth because he's a strong, courageous king. Now,
historically speaking, Steve, I don't think we've had too many priestly leaders, especially in the US. Maybe in Canada you may have had a few, but yeah, that's not the type of leader we nurture here.
Jimmy Carter was.
Yeah.
Carter was. And people criticized because he said, oh, he's too soft, he's too passive, he's too much of a healer. He wants to hold people's hands and love them.
He was cerebral. Yeah.
Yeah. But Carter was. But what Carter lacked was the proclamation.
Yeah.
And so I think Western civilization's lined up perfectly for success because you have a very strong proclaimer, and then now there's enough of us that are saying, okay, we can be the healers.
So the way it works is you put your right hand over your heart and you say, I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Hey, 60% of our workers in the States already. I'm busy trying to figure out how to become a C Corp in the United States before 25% tariffs hit my company. So I'm way ahead of you, bro.
Steve, thank you so much for being here. Well, you're welcome back anytime, my man.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next episode.
Let's go!